Hello and welcome to another episode of Smalltown Sportstalk. I'm here with host Andrew Willett. Andrew, how's quarantine treating you?
Never been better, Jonah. You know it.
Always. All right. So today, we're going a little off path from our typical NBA talk. There's not a whole lot of NBA news. Um, we've seen a lot of different things around the different sports worlds right now. The PGA Tour looks like they're going to try to get going in June. Possibility for MLS. We have Florida deeming the WWE and other major league things essential. So that does open the door for the MLB to possibly go down into Arizona and Florida if they wanted to start. Haven't really heard a lot from the NBA except for they're trying, and it seems like they are optimistic that they can get a season in now after, a week ago, them thinking it maybe wouldn't be possible.
Yep.
So, again, this virus, it's changing everything so quickly. So I think that's why we're just going to go with what we know is for sure, and that's the fact that it sounds like the NFL draft is going to be this Thursday. And with that being said, it seems like Joe Burrow's a sure. Yeah, it seems like Joe Burrow's a virtual lock at number one. Me and Andrew both have a little bit of different takes when it comes to what we think the Bengals should do at number one. So I'm going to let Andrew start us off here on what he thinks he should do. So, Andrew, you're the Bengals. You're on the clock. What are you doing?
Cincinnati Bengals on the clock. You are taking Joe Burrow out of LSU. He's the man coming into the league. If you are the Bengals, there is not a bad result. You can't get bad press from drafting Joe Burrow. Everybody thinks that he is going to be the guy coming out of college. He is expected to be phenomenal, and if not, you didn't know crap. He is the guy who is supposed to be a stud coming out of college with 60 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, threw for nearly 6,000 yards, led his team to an undefeated championship season, won the Heisman, all in a pro system at LSU. He's the no-brainer number one overall pick in the draft, Jonah.
Okay, so I want to point something out very quickly because I don't want people to think that I don't like Joe Burrow. Growing up in the Terre Haute area, Danny Etling played at LSU for a little bit, so I followed LSU. Ever since then, I've liked LSU a little bit. Purdue's my go-to, but I do follow LSU. So I love Burrow. I love Burrow. I think he's going to be an incredible NFL QB. But I just feel like with the Bengals' needs, they need a lot. I don't think it's just like one of those teams where it's like you get a quarterback, you're set. They need a lot, which is why, in my opinion, I think you take the generational talent, Chase Young at number one, because you still have the 33rd or the 34th pick in the second round. And the way teams and executives are talking, there is a chance Jordan Love is this year's Lamar Jackson that falls down. So in my personal opinion, I think you take Chase Young at number one, and then you hope Jordan Love falls. And if Jordan Love doesn't fall, then you just deal with Andy Dalton for another year and address quarterback next year. Because, again, I love Joe Burrow, but I just feel like for as many needs as you do need, if you're the Bengals, I think Chase Young is one of those guys that could really spark a defense. And if you're able to find a way to get Chase Young and then get someone like Jordan Love in the second round, or maybe even trade up and get Jordan Love, I think that's the better way to go, because I've watched a lot of Chase Young. Obviously, a lot of scouts think this. I mean, I think he's going to be generational talent that you do not see very often. And I think it's wise on pursuing that, because I think there are definitely other options at the QB. And Andy Dalton isn't even that bad of a quarterback.
No.
So I think, I don't know, I totally understand the hype around Burrow, because in my personal opinion, I can't remember a year like Burrow had in a long time.
Yeah.
Like, that was absolutely incredible, and I understand the hype. The hype is real. It should be real. But I just feel like Chase Young opens other doors for the drafts that I think the Bengals could need.
Sure, and I see what you're saying. Maybe build a team before you go and get a quarterback. But I think, Jonah, you and I are just a little bit, what would I say, privileged in our quarterback experience here in the NFL. Being Colts fans, we're pretty
Right.
freaking fortunate. And it's not like every draft pick is Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. There are teams that never see one of those guys. And I think from the position that the Bengals are in, Joe Burrow has the potential to be one of those guys, and I don't think you pass up on that. You go and you get that. And I think I see what you're saying about Chase Young, but if I'm not taking Joe Burrow, which I am, I would go and trade that number one overall pick because the draft capital that they could get from other teams who need a quarterback, because lots of teams need a
Well, and
quarterback
that's
right
another
now.
thing too. I mean, even from the second pick, I mean, we know if Burrow goes one, Chase Young is at two, right? So you
Yeah.
even look and maybe trade swap picks number two, get it because I think then Joe Burrow is a kind of guy that even though you're looking at picks one and two, I think you would get a decent return pick swap and get a good player coming in. So I understand what you're saying with trade, and you did bring up a very good point about quarterback privileges here in Indy,
Like
but
we have lucked out getting Peyton Manning and then
no pun
following that
intended,
up
right?
with Andrew Luck. Like, and I think we're gonna kind of feel it a little bit without having one of those guys for the next couple of years in Indianapolis.
Right. I think the big reason I like Chase Young at number one is looking at a lot of mock drafts. You see Burrow at one, and then the Bengals investing some of the next couple picks on wide receivers, which I don't like. Which is why I personally feel like you address multiple team needs rather than just offense,
Uh
if
huh.
that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I think you take Young and then try to work with a different quarterback in the draft because I don't like the idea of the Bengals just investing on quarterback and his weapons right now because this is,
Because they have
I
a lot
mean
more.
we all know that this is not a Bengals team that Burrow's going to come in here and they're going to be slinging and playing for the three spot in the AFC. Like this whole team needs rebuilt, and I don't like the idea
Yeah,
of
I think we
them
both
going all in on
agree
the
that
offensive end.
Andy Dalton's a pretty good quarterback, but
The
like,
pieces
and
haven't fit there.
I think we both agree that he is not your answer to get you to a championship, but he wasn't the reason that they got the number one overall pick.
Right,
They are
100%.
a bad team.
Yeah. And I think going in, we're going to have our top 10 quarterbacks in a little bit. I mean, this is one point that I don't think I'm going to be able to stress enough is like, this isn't like football's not like a basketball type thing where you can have LeBron James on your team and you're going to get carried into wherever he takes you. Like, football is one of those things like you need a whole team around you. Burrow can't walk in there and make the Bengals a contender just with himself. Like, in football, you have to have a good team
Yeah,
if you
it's
want to
rare to
compete.
have a guy who can even do a little bit of movement in
Right.
terms of wins.
So, I mean, that's where I stand on that. And I think we're just going to have to like agree to disagree here because both of us make very solid points when it comes to this. But at the same time, like we
And we'll
said,
see in a few years, depending on what they end up doing.
yeah, 100%.
And
Um,
my point on the draft capital, there are a lot of teams right now, Jonah, who need quarterbacks.
yeah,
Just
yep,
taking a look
100%.
at a few as we transition here: New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, and then I think where really we could see teams drafting quarterbacks early on: Cincinnati, the Chargers, Miami, Jacksonville, Washington, and New England is another one.
Yeah. Speaking of Jordan Love seems like one of those guys that if he doesn't fall, I think it'll be New England taking him because I think,
Really,
uh,
at 23.
yeah, yeah, I think I don't know. See, you hear a lot of this talk that they may be buying into Stidham, and I don't know. I feel like, and they brought back Hoyer. I just don't know if I like a Stidham and Hoyer QB one and two. I feel like
Oh yeah,
you need to take a young quarterback that can, even if he's not the guy this year, that can at least develop under a veteran like Hoyer and make it a competition. Because I don't think if the Patriots truly want to pick up where they left off and try to win right off the bat, I don't think you can just sit here and be content with Stidham and Hoyer. So I think the Patriots are one of those teams that you could see looking for a quarterback in the draft, which could mess with my kind of wants for the Bengals to try to hold off on that quarterback until the second round.
yeah, yeah. Well, and you looked at New England. Stidham is like one of the biggest question marks in the NFL right now,
Yep.
and like we don't know much about him, but if Bill Belichick has him on the roster, he really can't be that bad, can he?
Right. No, you're exactly right. I think I kind of look at it as I looked at Brissett this coming off season. Like, if you're a Patriots fan, you've heard the talk that Stidham's developing and that he's a good quarterback, but you just kind of nervous. You don't know how it's going to pan out. And you know, going into this last season with Brissett, I was extremely excited. I was like, yeah, he started for us, didn't really get it done,
Yeah,
but
we
was
had some
that really his
confidence in
fault?
him
Right. So, and he made me happy to start the year, and then other injuries, the year just didn't out as I expected it to go. But I like that's
for
kind of
sure.
where I view Stidham is just kind of that uncertain hype as far as Stidham and Brissett went because we don't really know what to expect of Stidham. We don't.
Yep. And so, teams looking at quarterbacks early in the draft, obviously, there has been some debate on whether Joe Burrow or Tua out of Alabama should go first in terms of quarterbacks. But I think we both agree that Joe Burrow is the best quarterback, followed by Tua.
100%. And I think the Tua thing would be a big, complete, whole nother story if it weren't for his injury.
Good
Like I
point.
think if Tua would have com- like continuously competed at that same level he was playing at before the injury and did not get injured, I think Burrow had an insane enough year that he'd still be the flat out number one. But I think it
I agree.
definitely would make the Bengals looking at Tua if it weren't for the injury.
I yeah, Tua's he's a good player. I heard Colts fans in the offseason talking about quarterbacks in the draft, and they didn't like Tua. I really think Tua is going to be a very good quarterback in the NFL.
Tua is one of those guys I kind of thought Ballard may try to sneak up there and trade before we got Buckner, and I am perfectly fine with the Buckner addition. But
I agree. That was a good deal.
I feel like that was just one of those things that Ballard was going to come out of nowhere and make a deal. But
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
happy with
get to
Buckner. I'm happy with what we
Indianapolis
got.
here soon.
Yeah.
But Justin Herbert, you talked about Jordan Love. Jalen Hurts or a guy like Jake Fromm, where do you think they will end up going?
I see. I don't know. I think Hurts is someone that you got to keep your eye on if you're the Colts. Like if you're a Colts fan, because again, we don't know. Same thing. We don't really know what to expect with Rivers, and I think the Colts know that we can't rely on Rivers to come out here and just be incredible at the age he's at now. And I've
38, I
heard,
believe.
yeah, you've heard talk that there is a chance that Hurts falls extremely late, like rounds 4, 5, even maybe later. And if that's the case, you could see a team like the Colts take him and try to develop him and make that QB room a little more competitive.
Yep. And Jonah, let's go ahead and break down some of the more interesting quarterback scenarios around the league. We'll go ahead and start right there with Indianapolis. Because you already said it, Philip Rivers, he's getting up there. I just don't know if Jalen Hurts, because Indianapolis has never been a place for quarterbacks who are dual threat.
Right. And that is an extremely good point because we have not seen that in a long time.
We didn't want Andrew Luck to run, and we certainly don't want Philip Rivers running. So, I mean, I'm not really sure on Jalen Hurts. I don't know if we'd looked into that. And the same thing with a team like New England, Jonah. I'm not sure that like Jalen Hurts, I think is a phenomenal quarterback, but they have never really looked at more mobile quarterbacks.
Well, right. And I think it's because of the what Brady has done in all his time in New England. Like Brady is your stand in the pocket and throw darts wherever your receiver's at type guy. He's not
Yep,
a scramble around and make a play with his feet. That's not him. So it's just
it's a new
I don't
era
know.
over there in New
It
England.
really is. And it's a new era in regards to some of these dual threat quarterbacks because before, I mean, you look at it, you had Michael Vick, but it wasn't like that was the main option. It seems like now the QBs that are starting to rise to the top of the league are dual threat. Like you have Mahomes, you have Lamar
I think
Jackson, and then so
I think on some level I would disagree with you there, Jonah, because like I think pocket passing is still like the most highly regarded skill that we want out of quarterbacks in the NFL.
well, right, 100%. But I'm like the point I was trying to make is like it seems like more and more teams are starting to try to sweep in there and get some of these guys, and that's why I had brought up like Mahomes and Jackson is because of both of them. Obviously,
Good
I think
point.
Mahomes' passing is there, and I think Jackson's got to work on his passing, some delivering some of those darts. But like
Yep.
we 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 witnessed it time and time again. Mahomes or Lamar got in trouble and they just ran. They got out of it on themselves. So I think I think if we start to see more dual threat quarterbacks like that, that could end up changing how the game is played. But for now, I think I like the mix we have in our game, where you have your teams that you have your pocket passers, and you have your teams that have the dual threat
And I
quarterbacks.
see what you were saying. Like I feel around 2012-ish, we had a little start. Like remember RG3 and Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick were big
Right.
time. We thought dual threat quarterbacks were going to be the next big thing, and we had a few years away from it. But I agree with you. We're getting back to it now.
Yep. 100%. And I mean, again, I think the biggest question mark as far as dual threat quarterbacks go is like, how do you maintain your body? Because I
Yeah.
remember watching the Colts play in Kansas City this past year. Um, there were, I can remember 3 different times in that game when Mahomes got taken down and he was on the ground for a little bit, beaten up.
Well, he missed a
So
few games last year.
yeah, so it's one of those things. You having a quarterback that can run like that completely changes how you look at your game plan and how the opposing team looks at their game plan. But you have to find a way to maintain that, which I think is why some teams do not want to commit to that.
So we will see what New England does, but we mentioned Tom Brady, Tampa Bay, their quarterback situation. They just signed Brady, 2 years, $50 million deal. Um, but do you think they could be an option looking for a quarterback for the future in the later rounds?
I think they could be, but I think the key words you just said there are later rounds. I don't think Tampa Bay is a team that's gonna maybe waste a 3 or 4, third or fourth round pick
Sure.
on a quarterback. But I think any team like that, and I think Tampa Bay and Arians are smart enough to know like Brady. They think Brady's got some left in the tank, but you can't rely on Brady for the next 5 years. Like it's just not how that's gonna be. So
And like you have to think about it though, because if you waste a draft pick on a quarterback, Tom Brady might be upset
right, 100%.
because
Which
he
is
had some fits with Garoppolo in New England. Obviously, he outlasted him. But so that'll be interesting to see if Tampa is a play in the draft.
yep.
Um,
I just want to go ahead and get into this. Speaking of Tampa Bay, where what are your expectations for Tampa Bay?
Expectations
Is it a
for,
success if they make the playoffs, or do you see them as a team that you're disappointed if they don't make a deep run?
in my opinion, I think it will be a success if they make the playoffs. They were pretty close last year, but I think the national media, their own expectations, if they don't, they really should be competing for a Super Bowl this year, in their opinion, I think. So if they don't do that, it's probably a disappointment.
Right.
Personally,
Uh,
I see a lot of hype around Tampa Bay, and I really believe that they could be a little bit like the Browns last year, where everybody thought Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, and then they won 7 or 8 games. So I think it
yeah,
could be a repeat of that.
I completely agree. I think just like like that was going to be a big point I mentioned is like I think it's a disappointment if they don't compete just because of the hype that has been put on them by the media. But in
Exactly.
my eyes, I don't know if they have enough across the board that they can come out and actually be legitimate contenders. Like I think they are definitely going to have to be a playoff team, but I think they're a first round exit playoff team. Like I don't think if I would not put money on them going to the championship conference or even the Super Bowl. So,
I
I mean, that's
agree.
where I stand
Bruce
on that.
Arians is a good coach, but
100%. I don't know if they have the right pieces to really contend with some of these other top teams.
we'll see
Because I
what they
mean, the
can do in the
Chiefs, they're
draft.
bringing back almost all their starters. So,
Yep. And then another team like that where they've got a quarterback, they just locked up Drew Brees for 2 years, 50 million. Um, do you think we could see them uh, take a later round draft pick on a quarterback for the future?
that's one of those kind of tricky things. I personally don't think so, and the reason I say that is because I think they like what they have in Taysom Hill. You
Do
know,
you think they
he's
could hand
shown.
him the keys in a matter of years?
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, it all depends on if they know something we don't know. Like, if Brees truly is going to stay these next 2 years, then I think Hill could be at a point that he could handle the QB job. But if Brees plays this year, calls it quits, I don't know if Taysom Hill's ready. So I think they got to talk to Brees and get a feel for what he's feeling, and then kind of make your decision based on that.
Jonah, you had a question on New Orleans?
Yeah. What do you think about Brees? Do you think this is it for Brees, or do you think he holds on for the 2 years he just signed for?
I think he's got 2 years.
Two.
Yeah,
I look at it as two unless they win the Super Bowl this year. I think if he gets another ring this year, I think that may be
out on
his.
top.
Yeah, he wants to go out on top. But I think if anything less than a Super Bowl, I think he'll stay for those two because he showed
Yeah,
it last year. He's got a lot left in the tank. I think.
and he's another one of those guys that's pretty old, but the Saints are a phenomenal team. Like they
Right.
really should be competing for Super Bowls.
100%. 100%.
Okay, looking at another interesting quarterback scenario, the situation over in Chicago, Jonah.
Yeah.
Obviously, they made the huge trade a few years ago to get the number 2 overall pick and take Mitchell Trubisky. And then this offseason, a fourth rounder for battered up Nick Foles.
Right. That's just like you said. That's an interesting situation. It depends on what Nick Foles we see. I think as of right now, I like Trubisky as the starter out of those two guys. But if Foles can get healthy and play the way he played in Philadelphia, then we're looking at a whole different scenario.
And I
A
know we've
whole
talked
different
about
scenario.
this before. We've never seen Foles do anything outside of Philadelphia.
Right. And that's a good point because, like you just said, where he was before, I mean, injury, the injury definitely hurt him. But even then, when he came back, like Minshew had proved he was ready to take over.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, it just kind of, it's just one of those things you just gotta guess. Like, you don't know how he's gonna fit out in Chicago.
You're going with Trubisky. I think Nick Foles right now.
I think it's good to have Foles there too, just for the sake of even trying to develop Trubisky a little more. Not that Foles is some legend, but I mean, again, he's a veteran guy that's been through it. He knows a thing or two about the game, and I think that could end up being pretty big in the development of Trubisky.
And from there, I want to jump to Jacksonville, where Nick Foles came from. They have picked number 9 in the draft. You mentioned Gardner Minshew, but I'm not really too sold on maybe they take a guy like Tua if he falls to number 9.
I think, I think definitely a quarterback is in play in that first round for them, but I don't think it'll be one of those things where they're going to trade up. I think they're content where they are.
I
If a
agree.
quarterback falls to them, I think they'll take him. But if they can't get one, then I think they are willing to live with Minshew another year and
So
let
you're
him
you're
develop.
telling me we're not all about the Minshew mania?
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Minshew Mania yet, if I'm being honest.
Good old mustache. Another one. God, they had a wreck of an offseason with the Cam Newton departure, saying that he requested a trade when not at all the case. Carolina, who went out and signed Teddy Bridgewater, 3 years, 21 million per year. What do you think?
I think Teddy's the guy, and I love Teddy. I,
You know,
the
like
way he played,
just for a minute, Jonah, no one like that is a phenomenal football name right there, Teddy Bridgewater.
yeah,
Like one of the top football names in the league for sure.
right, right. Um, I think Bridgewater's the guy there. He the way he played before his bad injury in Minnesota, like that dude was a franchise quarterback there.
Hmm.
And then what he did in New Orleans last year, I kind of want to sit here and say that Bridgewater did that because at the end of the day, um, the options he had and the weapons he had in New Orleans last year is a lot.
Exactly, Jonah. That's what I like. They're a good football team.
Right. But at the same time, I think he definitely showed some different flashes of what he was doing in Minnesota that was working out so well for him. And like when you have an injury like his, it's one of those things like every day you have that you're healthy is a step in the right direction. So continuously gaining health, gaining strength, I think I like what Bridgewaters can bring in Carolina.
And I've got a hot take here, Jonah. I don't think I think that the Carolina Panthers will regret this move. I
All right.
don't think Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not quite sold on him as the guy. I put a lot of that on New Orleans for his success last year. And I don't like how they just threw out Cam Newton.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, like we talked about, dual threat wise, they went out with the dual threat and brought in the dual threat.
Yep.
So, we'll just see how it plays out. It'll definitely be interesting.
Another quarterback situation where you wouldn't think they should be taking a quarterback in the draft, but Dallas is reportedly looking at quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts as a potential option, and they have just franchise tagged Dak Prescott. So, what do you think about Dallas?
That's one of those question marks for me. Like, I honestly could not sit here and give you a good reason why they will or will not draft a quarterback because it seems like that franchise always has something interesting going on.
Oh yeah, Jerry Jones.
Right. I personally I really like Dak. Like, I think Dak is going to have a career year next year. I think he's going to be good,
He had a
but at the same
career
time,
year last year.
and he's going to get better in my opinion. I
I
think
agree.
so. I don't know. I mean, again, I could not tell you honestly. I don't know what to expect when it comes to the Cowboys.
They've had some contract issues with Dak Prescott. They just fired their coach. It'll be interesting moving forward. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Um. One
you,
last question I have. What? So speaking of Cam Newton, where do you think he ends up?
Cam Newton. I'm between the Chargers, the Patriots, and Jacksonville.
Yeah. I think I like the Chargers.
Really.
Yeah.
He was throwing with Tyrod Taylor, Chargers quarterback one as of right now.
Right.
So we will see. I think those are the three places that still need a starting quarterback, and then they could be pretty good after that.
Right. 100%. So yeah, I like the Chargers. Other than that, I'll let you bring next topic.
Um, I just want to talk about the Oakland Raiders a little bit because they had a report that came out that said they were going to be looking for wide receivers in the draft to put around Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota. So is there trouble in the quarterback room over in Oakland?
See, that's one of those things. I think Carr is the man as of right now, and I think I would hope that the organization was straight up and just straight up said, we're bringing you here as a backup for Carr right now. But at the same time, I think it could be one of those things like we saw in Tennessee. If Carr struggles, then you could see them give it to Mariota and see what he can do in their
Funny
system.
how things
So
work.
exactly. So I think as of right now, I think Carr is the man. I don't think it'll be one of those big QB competitions, but I would not rule out Mariota being the starter by the end of the year.
Yeah, and we saw Oakland as a team who showed interest in Tom Brady, but they got Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota, so that'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, 100%.
And
Definitely.
you mentioned Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, and I think the other one out there is Andy Dalton, and I think between those three, they will all head to New England, Jacksonville, and the Chargers.
Yeah, another team I think maybe not. I don't know. It's just one of the things. Maybe not this year, but I think the Steelers are going to have to start maybe looking for what they want to do at quarterback in the next coming
That's a good
years.
point. They're another team like Tampa Bay or New Orleans.
Right, because first of all, Ben's getting up there in age, and he can't seem like he can stay healthy. So, do you want to stick with Mason Rudolph, or do you want to invest
You
in
absolutely
another
don't
young
want to
quarterback?
stick with Mason Rudolph, Jonah. He had a rough go last year.
Yeah, he did. He did. So that's just another team to keep an eye on. I don't think they'd make a move this year, but I think they could be one of those teams that out of random you get an alert on your phone and a quarterback is going there. You know what I mean? So keep an eye on Pittsburgh.
Fair point. And I think that's all of our quarterback talk, the most important position in football. So
Right.
moving on over
So
to Indianapolis.
right. So Andrew, in your eyes, where do you see is the biggest need? Like, where do the Colts need to go in the draft to start off?
I think there are some priorities that the Colts need to entertain with the first few rounds in the draft, but wide receiver, cornerback, and then I believe there's a need for another safety, and you could always use pass rush and offensive line depth.
Right. In my eyes, I think the receiver is the biggest position.
Yep.
The defense, obviously, letting Pierre Desir go. I think you're gonna have to look at maybe some options down the draft of ways to bulk up your defense, but at the same time, I think our pass rush is going to be good enough that the defense is one of those things. I think that'll just kind of, regardless of who we have in the backfield, I think we will find a way to kind of get our defense to form together, which is why I think you just kind of stick to the offensive end right now. Um, I think you have to have at least one. I think in my eyes, two other receivers that you can rely for Rivers to get the ball to. Uh, Hilton, Campbell, Pascal. That I don't think those three are gonna cut it, and especially with the injury concern with Ty.
Yeah. And it's really just been like last season for TY in terms of
Right?
injuries, but
Yeah.
now there is that concern.
Another position. I don't think this is something I don't think will be addressed till very late. If they do address it, do you get a backup running back? Because the offensive line is at a point where it seems like any running back could potentially succeed in the Colts offense.
I see what you're
So
saying, but Marlon Mack, and then I believe that we still have guys underneath him.
we do, we do. But I think if the time is right and someone like Jonathan Taylor
Oh
or out
yeah,
of
Jonathan
Wisconsin
Taylor
or
is a
Clyde
monster.
Edwards-Helaire from LSU, if they're hanging around, I think it'd be worth the pick because having one of those guys behind Marlon Mack with the Colts offensive line,
Oh
I
my!
think that could be scary.
And
So,
they've
like I
got
said,
two
I
picks in the
don't
second
think a
round this
running
year.
back. Right, right, right. I don't think a running back is necessarily a position of need, but I think it's worth investing in if the time is right.
Yep, I would agree.
And
Now,
then other than that,
Jonah, what do you
like I
do
said,
at
Hurts.
34 if, let's say, Jordan Love has fallen that far?
I think you take Jordan Love. I definitely think you take Jordan Love because then one, you make those three guys compete, or then potentially you look at trading away Brissett because I think Brissett is at a point we wouldn't get a ton of good value for him, but he definitely has some value.
And
So
I think we should have traded Brissett when we had the option. We could have
right,
gotten a second round pick, maybe a first. out of him a couple of
Right.
years ago.
So it's one of those things. I think if Love is there, you absolutely take him, and then you evaluate your options after that. But other than that, the only other quarterback, I mean, like I said, I like Hurts. So if he's there late in the draft, I think it's worth the risk. But other than that, I don't think the quarterback position is really a focal point of the Colts draft this year.
And we heard Chris Ballard say he preached patience as he said, "I'm not gonna reach for a quarterback in the draft."
Right. Exactly. So I think the one thing that I've learned as a Colts fan since Ballard has came, you just gotta trust Ballard. So whatever Ballard does in the draft, I'm gonna trust
Trust
that.
in
And
Ballard, yes, sir.
exactly. So I think the Colts definitely have their options, but at the same time, I think they're at a pretty good point. And if they can hit a couple of needs, I think the Colts are a team that could compete this year.
I agree.
So this last segment, what we're going to move to is Andrew and I have both compiled our top 10 NFL quarterbacks going into this season. The way this is based off of is what we saw last year and what we expect out of them this year. So, Andrew,
Right
first off,
now,
give me a couple of your honorable mentions.
a couple of my honorable mentions. Not making my top 10 list, but still pretty strong quarterbacks. I had Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, and then I had Dak Prescott and Jimmy Garoppolo. Not
So, believe
making
it or
my
not,
list.
take out Dak Prescott, but those three guys are the three guys I had written down as my honorable mention. And I
They in the right position. They are very strong quarterbacks.
Right. And I think Rivers is a guy you potentially look at depending on how this year ends out. But
I had Philip
I mean,
Rivers
other than
dropping
that,
to 17.
yeah. So other than that, we start at 10, work our way down, we can go one by one. Andrew, go ahead and give me your 10th guy.
My 10th guy, Kirk Cousins over in Minnesota. We saw him step up a little bit last year with really some great games at the end of the year. He can throw it all over the field after some early struggles, and I think he really could be leading his team to near a Super Bowl within the next couple of years.
Yep. Kirk Cousins is a guy that I completely just forgot to mention. He is honorable mention for me. My 10th guy, the way I don't know. See, this is one of those things. I don't think a lot of people view him at this point. But with the addition of Hopkins in Arizona, I think Kyler Murray's gonna have a breakout year. Like I think Kyler Murray will be a top 10 quarterback this year.
Really,
So I have Kyler Murray at number 10, and then I'll go ahead and give you my ninth. Kind of sticking with that. Do with the quarterback. I had Deshaun Watson. I think there's a question mark there with
only at
Watson because I
9.
don't know. Yeah,
Really,
I think he's
okay,
got the potential, but without Hopkins, I don't know how he's going to perform this year. So that's why he's definitely a top 10
that's a good point.
quarterback in my opinion. But the reason I have him at 9 is because I don't know how that's going to work out without Hopkins.
So I obviously had Deshaun Watson up there in my top 5. It'll be interesting to see our how our lists lap over each other. But my number 9, I had Matt Ryan.
Okay. At 8, you had him just off your list. You said I have Dak Prescott. I think Prescott is in one of those positions where they obviously have a good core there. You know, him and Zeke, and
They just
with the
kept
new
his
coach,
wideout.
right? So with the new coach, he's got some options at receiver. I think this is the year we see the Cowboys make that leap and potentially contend for a Super Bowl. So that's why I have Prescott at 8.
Okay, that's looking up for Prescott. But I've got one that will definitely. He did not make your list either. Like neither did Matt Ryan. But I had Matt Stafford at number 8. The guy has been, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback for quite a few years. It has just been the core around him that has absolutely been terrible. The
Right.
Lions, they have the number 3 overall pick this year. It'll be interesting to see because a lot of people think they should take a quarterback. But I think they're going to try and trade it. Or really, they should build around Matthew Stafford a little more. Give him some help because that guy He's got a cannon for an arm. He is over 4,000 yards every year, pretty much. Give him some help. He's a good quarterback. He's my number 8.
Right. And actually, my number 7 is Matt Ryan. So I like Matt Ryan
Okay.
at 7.
Okay.
I think one thing I think we've seen out of Matt Ryan is just consistency. And I think that, they did not have the best year last year. So
It's
I
been a
expect
couple
this.
of off years for them.
Right. So I personally expect kind of that bounce back year, him and Julio Jones to get things going again, which is why I like Matt Ryan at 7. And then at 6, Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. Well, and that's where I did into it because my number 7 is Tom Brady. Jonah, we've seen him fall off.
Right. And I think the reason I still have him up there is because of the fact I'm not ready to give up. Because if there's anything we have known about him, it's
Yeah, do
never
not throw
count
in
him
the
out.
towel on Tom Brady.
Exactly. So I think, and he definitely has the wide receiver options around him this year. So that's why I like Brady still up there.
That's a good
Um,
point. He's got a good core in Tampa Bay, and I think we saw Tom Brady as a top 3, maybe number 1 guy for the last few years.
yeah.
And then coming into this one, he had a little bit of a drop off last year. And his last Super Bowl wasn't very good either. So that's where he sits at number 7 and number 6 on your list.
Right. So give me your 6th guy, and then you can go ahead and give me your 5th too.
My number 6, gonna surprise you a little bit. Aaron Rodgers,
All
another
right.
guy who I think we had probably at top 3. You might still have him at top 3, but I have Aaron Rodgers falling to number 6 because his team, he has not led them super far in the playoffs. He's had good years, but not up to the Aaron Rodgers level that we have come to expect. So that's why
Right.
he's at number 6 for me. And then I'll give you my number 5, Deshaun Watson. We already talked about him, but he's a phenomenal. He's one of those dual threat guys, and he's a
Yeah.
great quarterback. And I think we're just gonna keep seeing better and better from him.
Right. So I actually have Rodgers at number 5 for me. Um, he's
Okay.
again just like Brady. He's one of those guys I'm not going to give up on. Not that he necessarily had a down year last year. I think he was actually still in the MVP conversation,
Oh yeah.
but I think there are 4 guys better than him in the league. So I like Rodgers at 5, and then at number 4, I think you probably value this guy a little bit bigger, a little more. I like Russell Wilson, and the reason I have Wilson at 4 is he is an incredible quarterback. Like, he is so good. But the 3
True.
guys I have ahead of him, I think, are just, in my opinion, that much better. So I have Rodgers at 5, Russell Wilson at 4. Go ahead, give me your number 4 and number 3.
Number 4, Drew Brees. I think we saw him come back from injury last year and kind of fall off a little bit, but we know he's still a phenomenal quarterback in the league. I'm not ready to
Right.
say that he is more valuable to his team after what we saw Teddy Bridgewater do with his team last year. I
Yeah.
think Drew Brees is probably we know he's got a couple more years, but we also know that he's still a phenomenal quarterback. So he is my number 4. And then
Right.
my number 3, Lamar Jackson.
All right. So I actually have Lamar Jackson number 3 too. And then speaking of Drew Brees, I have Drew Brees at number 2. The reason, I mean, like I said, some of these go into prediction based on this year. I really feel like this is the year that, I mean, obviously Breeze has won the Super Bowl before, but I think this is the year that core of Kamara, Breeze, and Thomas, they
Oh yeah.
really break through and they get their Super Bowl. And I
It's a
think
different era
Breeze,
of Saints football, even though they have the
right,
same quarterback.
right. So I think that's why I have Breeze at 2, is because the potential I still see for him. I think this is another Super Bowl year for him. And then I'm gonna go ahead and give my number 1. I think it's pretty obvious. I'm sure you have the same one. I have Patrick Mahomes at number 1.
Yep, I agree. But I'm going to talk about Lamar Jackson a little bit at number 3. We both agreed with him there. I see him as we both agree that he just has a little bit more work to do from the quarterback position, but he is another dual threat guy who obviously MVP of the league last year. Like we're talking about that guy. improving, but he's got a lot to prove in the playoffs, and I think
Right.
we're both going to see him be able to do that in the near future.
Yeah,
And then a guy
100%.
you already mentioned, I value him very highly, Russell Wilson at number 2. He definitely he was runner up last year to just Lamar Jackson, and he's a guy we've seen step up a lot passing the football in the last couple of years. He's always been very valuable to his team, but let's not forget this: he's never led a team in the NFL that hasn't made the playoffs.
That's a great point. And again, like that's why I had said Wilson is incredibly good, which is the only reason I have him for is because I didn't want to leave the MVP out of the top 3, and I thought, and again, the whole potential factor is why I put Breeze ahead of him. But
Sure.
like I said, Wilson, the points you just gave me, like extremely talented quarterback.
And he just continues to develop better and better. And then we both had Patrick Mahomes at number 1. He's the league MVP 2 years ago, Super Bowl MVP last year. He's only 25. He's got the entire world ahead of him.
Right.
He's an
100%.
unbelievable talent.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know that we'll ever see more in a quarterback than we see in Patrick Mahomes right now.
right. It's not often you see someone with that many skills at one position. But again, it just kind of comes down to that, kind of dual threat. You look at
Exactly.
my top 10 list. I 1 Patrick Mahomes, 2 Lamar Jackson. I don't know if you really consider Dak Prescott a dual threat. He moves a little bit, but he's more of a pocket passer, so I'll leave him off. I see 4 true dual threat quarterbacks in my top 10.
I think I have 4 in the top 5, so I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
So yeah. So my list: Murray, Watson, Prescott, Ryan, Brady, Rodgers, Wilson, Jackson, Breeze, Mahomes. Andrew's list: Cousins, Ryan, Stafford, Brady, Rodgers, Watson, Breeze, Jackson, Wilson, and Mahomes. And I think that's going to do it. Andrew, you have anything else?
That's all good for me, Jonah.
All right. So thank you very much for joining. Again, like we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, everything is continuously changing. So if you made it this far in the episode, please stay safe. Continue social distancing. We got to get through this so we can get our sports back, because I know Andrew and I both,
You're
man,
darn
this
right.
is,
I miss the NBA,
yeah.
Jonah.
One other thing I do want to point out is major props to the WNBA with the way they opened their WNBA draft last night, having the
And we got to
three,
see how a virtual draft would be.
right. They had the 3 young ladies that died in the helicopter crash as their honorary draft picks, which in my opinion was an extremely incredible moving thing. So great job, WNBA.
And they
But
announced
yeah,
the Kobe and Gigi Bryant
right.
award.
I think I think WNBA is one of those things that not a lot of people follow, but it was nice to see them have that spotlight, and what they did with the spotlight yesterday was incredible. So great job.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, and we got to see how that virtual draft went ahead
right.
of next Thursday's NFL draft, April the 23rd. So, and they handled it pretty well. It can be a little awkward, but they did it good job.
Yeah, it's just this whole thing is just crazy to think about. Like if we resume where we're at in the NBA, we probably have 18, 19 games left. When the NBA playoffs today should actually be the first day of the NBA playoffs. So
Doesn't that make you sad, Jonah?
yeah, so I mean we got to get through this. I think that's going to do it for our podcast. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. Otherwise, continue support. Follow us on Twitter, like, retweet stuff. We appreciate any support we can get. So thank you very much.
Stay safe out there. Wash your hands. Social distance. You can catch us on Apple Podcast, I believe YouTube, and Spotify.
Spotify. Yeah. So thanks for listening. Have a great next week. Thank you again.
See ya.